Well, welcome. We're glad that you're here. As you know, those of us that are on site, we didn't meet last week because there simply was not new material. There hadn't been a time to be able to create it and get it for us. So we're glad to be back in operation here. We've had a wonderful, beautiful day today here in Oklahoma City. We understand it's going to be cold and dreary tomorrow, so we're glad that everyone that's been ill has had a little bit of a chance to get well and so forth. So we start chapter 10 this evening, image and likeness. Number 2, dealing with Adam and Eve. Last time we met in our last chapter, several of you have caught up by watching the videos that Richard is taping and putting online. And oh, by the way, since we met last time, we've heard from Will in Burleson, Texas. We've heard from Zarko in Vianden, Luxembourg. He spoke to us a year and a half ago and is continuing to watch. And it was nice to just hear from William again, or Zarko again. We've heard from Father George in Indiana, Pennsylvania. There really is a town called Indiana in Pennsylvania. And then we've heard from Kevin in Franklin, Kentucky, and Edwin in Puerto Rico, actually called long distance and said hello. I checked to make sure that the recent earthquake hadn't been in his area. It was 30 miles away or so. And then when the hurricane had hit a couple of years ago, it hit on the other edge of the island. So it's exciting to be connected with other people besides just those of us here in the room, to know that the Spirit blows where the Spirit will. If we'll just keep busy doing our stuff here, taking care of one another, letting Richard come and provide this. Jerry's done it in the past, provided for us. And God is blessing others through the fact that we're here just taking care of business at home. So God bless you for being here. If you weren't here, Richard wouldn't be here, Jerry wouldn't be here, and I guess there'd be no reason for me to be here. I'd just be talking to myself. So chapter 10. Last week in Image and Likeness, we dealt with, just a quick refresher, that the word person, golly, and I went off and left all my markers. Aren't you lucky? That the word person does not mean individual. We, in our vernacular, make them interchangeable. The word person is a technical term that means face to face, eyeball to eyeball. So that it means, like the term husband and wife are a pair of words that create an entity that defines both of them. You can't define the word husband without reference to a wife, and vice versa. That would be a special kind of a relationship where the identity of those involved is determined by the nature of the relationship itself. Just being an individual riding a bus with other individuals, there's no relationship implied there except just marbles bouncing around in a jar, something like that. So the word person means half of a interaction, half of a relationship, half of an us. And that half of an us, and we're going to touch on this, but if it's just Jerry and me saying, hello, at this moment, I'm either treating Jerry as a rock, I can kick him out of my way, ignore him, or person to person, hi, how are you? Fine, good, okay. It doesn't have to be longer than something that brief, but in that moment, It's how I see him and how I see myself. If I am a person, and we all are created as persons, then I need to see Jerry, that's a person. And in this moment, eyeball to eyeball, I am a person relating to him. And my being a person relating to Krasimir or Jerry or Terry, it is not dependent on what they do about it. They can treat me like a rock. They can ignore me. They can say, get out of here. What are you so cheerful about? Saying hello to me as I'm stumbling down the sidewalk or whatever. But my seeing myself as a person and knowing you are a person, whether you know it or not, is how I can relate to you in this moment of saying hello, regardless of how you respond to that or how you're looking at me. So that's what we mean by the word person. And the tricky thing is, we don't have a second term for the other one in that interaction. It's person to person, eyeball to eyeball, face to face. So sometimes we can use the capital O on the word other and say person and the other. But or I can say it's easier person to person because the minute I say other, that's still a zero. Not much. If I'm not careful. So, but you get what we're talking about. And so that's where we start this evening on our chapter 10, Adam and Eve. Face to face and eye to eye, Adam is created as half of an us. He is not an individual, a singular identity. He is a person, a mutual half of a pair, half of a couple, half of an us. Face to face and eye to eye, Adam and Trinity, God the Creator, were in each other's presence and shared each other's presence. The presence of relationship. Adam's ontological identity, who he is, that which constitutes his existence, that which established and defined who he is person. Adam is a person. The us that is knew Adam was created to be half of an us. He created him to be half of an us with the Trinity being the other half. But the us that is Trinity also knew that it was not enough for Adam to be part only of an us with the Trinity. Adam's identity and capacity to be half of an us needed others like himself with whom to be half of an us with. Well, a helper comparable. Genesis 2:18 says, and the Lord God said, it is not good that man, the word man in Genesis is the word Adam. So it's either his name or just mankind in general. It's not good that mankind should be alone, not good that Adam should be alone. I will make him a helper comparable to him. So Adam gave names to all cattle, to the birds of the air, to every beast of the field, but for Adam there was not found a helper comparable to him. Adam could relate to and interact with the animals, and even though Adam and the animals shared similar animalistic characteristics, they did not share a comparable personal interactive capability. Now, you may think your dog does or your cat does. Okay. No animal can be the other half of an us with Adam. Created with the image of God within him and created with the ability to become like the image, Adam had no one comparable to himself with whom to be personal. Could with the Trinity, he needed for there to be another like himself, another with the image of the personal Creator with whom to interact person to person. He needed someone to help him become personal by interacting personally with him. Just think of being Robinson Crusoe on an island all by yourself. No one to talk to but the rocks. A generic us and a marital us. The one who is the divine us created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. It is this shared image that creates and constitutes the realization of a face-to-face, person-to-person relationship with the one whose image constitutes our identity. We are made with that capability that lets us interact with God in the first place. It is this image that we share with one another that makes possible a face-to-face, person-to-person relationship with fellow humans. That's what we have in common. Not just an animalistic side, a physical bodily side. It's the image that lets us interrelate person to person with one another. It is this image that we share with one another that makes possible face-to-face, person-to-person relationship with fellow humans. Now, on a daily basis, we encounter any number of other people. Everyone we encounter is a person, regardless of how they behave or see themselves. They are half of an us. The moment in which we encounter another is an opportunity for half of an us in that moment to connect with the other half of an us, and in wholeness, experience even briefly the presence of each other. What? You see, if I'm coming over here, I am half of an us. That's who I am. In my very basic identity of human nature, I am half of an us. Bingo. Half. I'm always looking to connect with another half to experience wholeness. Joanna is half of an us. Brenda, you're half of an us. Jerry, half of an us. If we can ever realize this is who we are, then we're always in need of interacting with the other half. Only everyone can be momentarily the other half. This is mind-boggling. I can, in the moment of having conversation with Jerry, half to half become the moment of a whole. Joanna, a whole. Cheryl, a whole. You got it. That's what we're talking about. Imagine humanity behaving that way. Mind-boggling that we were created for that to become reality. So on a daily basis, we have the opportunity for that to happen. Now, if we're waiting for somebody else to have it cause it to happen to us, we will wait a long time. The trick if I can use that, it's a lousy term, is for us to be transformed in knowing who we are, and we're going to treat other people as a person since they don't know that that's who they are. We get to treat them because we know the secret of who they are. They are half of an us. Even the brief moment of walking by a stranger in a hallway is an opportunity to nod their way, perhaps even say, "Good morning," as we keep walking. Even in that briefest of moments, we are person to person. A whole experience. Being half of a generic us is not exclusive. Our interaction with every other fellow human being is a potential opportunity, regardless of how briefly, of being person to person with the other. Obviously, not all encounters are brief or nameless. We develop more lengthy encounters with classmates, fellow workers, and friends. Each of these extended opportunities are opportunities of a different kind. You know, absence may make the heart grow fonder, but familiarity breeds contempt. In other words, person-to-person relationships that occur and last over a period of time allow for the deepening of the relationship and a deepening of our ability to be personal, even when knowing potentially negative or annoying characteristics or habits of the other. We can overlook that. We can be personal in spite of them being themselves. Of course, on the other hand, we can grow extremely irritated. Now, the greatest example of being face-to-face and person-to-person is marriage. Regardless how good we may be at wearing a mask and hiding our true nature, it is impossible, eventually, not to be caught in the act of being who we are by our spouse. The greatest gift given to mankind is therefore the gift of marriage. We are created in the image and given the power to become like that image. Our greatest opportunity day in and day out to be person to person with someone else is with our own spouse. It is not good to be alone. Our spouse is the greatest practical aid to our becoming like God and therefore achieving the purpose of our own creation and existence. There is no better practical opportunity of learning how to behave like God than with our spouse in our own marriages. Well, you were doing good, Deacon Ezra. Now you've gone to meddling. But you get the point. It's not good to be alone. We need each other. We need each other in the brief moment of strangers passing on a sidewalk. We need each other in friendships and relationships where we began to be able to treat someone as a person in spite of us now seeing them at their worst, being disappointed by their behavior, and allowing ourselves to be caught at our worst, because none of us has yet figured out how to be like the image of God within us. So we need one another, even the strangers, and even in the most special of that one-on-one relationship, a marriage, where it becomes so painfully obvious how much we fail at doing this. I mean, we fail. It's really kind of easy doing it momentarily on the sidewalk, passing a stranger.
I'm good at that.
Yeah, you're good at that. Yeah, we can get pretty good at that, but nothing tougher than always having to face your own failure in your own home. Oh my God, I've done it again. Chapter 11. Someone's going, "Whew, let's get out of that chapter quickly." Chapter 11. Image and likeness, number 3, the Incarnation. There's a good chance we're not going to finish this chapter tonight, so we'll do the best we can to go to maybe halfway through, and next week we'll finish it and go on from there. We're looking at what does it mean to be created in the image of God and given the power, the ability, and the purpose of becoming like that image, to behave in agreement with the image of God within us. We're exploring what that means. We've just explored it in terms of person to person. We've now explored it in terms of relationship, including our marriages. Now we do it in terms of the question of the incarnation of the one who is becoming a human being like us. Adam and Eve's choice. Adam and Eve were created in the image of God and given the free will for the purpose of becoming like God. The serpent gave them a counteroffer. Instead of becoming like the God who created them, that is, instead of behaving like God, they could instead become their own gods and behave like they wanted to behave. That was Satan's offer. Adam and Eve chose to be godettes. In Paradise Lost, John Milton's famous poem, after Satan had been cast out of heaven and finds himself in hell, Satan looks around, surveys his situation, and comes to this conclusion. Is this the region, this the soil, the clime? Said then the lost archangel, this the seat that we must exchange for heaven? This mournful gloom for that celestial light? Be it so, since he who is now sovereign can dispose and bid what shall be right. Farthest from him is best. Farewell, happy fields, where joy forever dwells. Hail, horrors. Hail, infernal world, and thou profoundest hell. Receive thy new possessor, one who brings a mind not to be changed by place or time. For you see, the mind is its own place, and in itself can make a heaven of hell or a hell of heaven. What matter? Where it is that I be still the same, and what I should be. If I be still the same, all but less than he who the thunder has made greater, here at least we shall be free. The Almighty has not built here for his envy, and he will not drive us hence from here. Here, even in hell, we may reign supreme, and in my choice, to reign is worth ambition, though in hell. Better to reign in hell than serve in heaven. Adam and Eve having made the same choice as Satan, came to the same conclusion. It is better to reign as godettes in a hell of our own making than become like the true God and live in paradise. Better to do what I want to do than become like God and treat you like a person. I'd rather treat you like an idiot. Better to be in charge of hell than serve God in heaven. Woo-hoo. Adam and Eve's choice was real. Adam and Eve made a choice between living in two different kinds of worlds. And by worlds, we do not speak of different physical universe. We mean world in the sense of the Greek word cosmos as a stable, harmonious world order. Instead of a universe ordered according to behaving in agreement with the principle of creation, Adam and Eve chose to create their own world order that required others to behave according to the principles they chose. Mankind, eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, began creating its own world order, its own harmonious system of what was deemed right and wrong. Ever since the Younger Dryas event, 12,800 BC, Neolithic humans have created their new world orders as they spread across the globe. Mesopotamian cultures, Asian cultures, Egyptian cultures, each created different world orders, as did the African cultures and later the Mediterranean and Western European cultures. The world in which we live, with its various competing world orders, as well as new world orders, continually being proposed, regardless of which world we are in or which world we prefer, all of them are man-made worlds imposing a system of right and wrong. That is to say, all human world orders are manifestations of eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. We like the one we're born in. We're all born in a world from eating of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. That's where Adam and Eve chose, and we're living in the world they chose, and everybody's creating their own version of what's good and evil. Well, the Creator's world order, the one that is, did not abandon his creation. However faintly, the memory of their being, the one that is, persisted within humanity. This memory gave rise to a great variety of religions and deities. Even modern rationalistic and atheistic belief systems have been unable to account for the nagging presence within us, the nagging suspicion of unfilled purpose, the nagging notion that something has been lost. We have chosen not to become like the image of the Creator within us. Regardless of our denial to the contrary, we still contain the image of the Creator within us. Throughout all human history, there have been those in whom the memory of the image remained strong, particularly Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and their descendants. Around 1500 BC, the Creator revealed His identity as the one who is, Ha'on, to Moses. Through Moses, the theocratic world order, known as the Torah, the law, was given for the Israelites to organize their communal life together. Now, we previously discussed the Mosaic system of rules and regulations. Might have been page 153 or so in the manuscript that you've got. The Mosaic Law helped define and maintain the identity of ancient Israel. With its Mosaic Law, the descendants of ancient Israel have survived as a people for over 3,400 years. But like all laws and all systems of right and wrong, the law of Moses could reduce one's exposure to risk. However, the same as all other laws, the law of Moses could not give life. As noted previously, keeping the rules may keep us from being killed. Keeping the rules may prolong our mortal life, may prolong this living in death that we call life, but keeping the rules does not, cannot, and will not give us life. Being good keeps us out of trouble. It does not give us life. The giving of the Torah was not an endorsement of eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It was an act of mercy by God. Out of mercy, the one who is condescended to give a set of rules that was beneficial inside that arena of new world orders, created from the perspective of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The Torah is a system of good and evil. It is one that the God who is has condescended to give mankind, since we've chosen to go live in a world of good and evil rules of our own making. But instead of seeing the Creator as a God of mercy and compassion for having given us a set of rules to live by, since that's what we've chosen to do, mankind used the law of Moses to turn God into a divine judge filled with wrath and anger when mankind broke any of the rules. Instead of living within the rules because it reduced their exposure to risk from others, mankind, threatened with eternal damnation in a fiery hell, obeyed the rules begrudgingly out of fear. Mankind no longer thought of them carrying the image of a loving God within them. Instead, they now saw themselves as sinners in the hands of an angry God. Well, how about the grand super infinite plan? The what? The grand super infinite plan. The divine plan was not about rules and regulations. It was never about being good and evil, right and wrong, or reward or punishment. St. Paul speaks of the purpose of creation as the mystery hidden from the ages and from generations, a mystery that has now been revealed in Jesus Christ. This mystery is obviously the ineffable and incomprehensible union, the joining together, according to that big word in Greek, hypostasis, that foundational undergirding of existence, of divinity and humanity. The foundational union of humanity and divinity. The mystery is that inexpressible, incomprehensible union, the joining of divinity and humanity together, having the image and behaving like it. In other words, in Jesus, there is the unique and express foundational undergirding of reality of a person in which the divine and human are properly united. In Jesus, there is the proper union of divinity and humanity, of image and likeness, of ontological existence and existential behavior. The agreement of who we are with how we behave. The agreement of who we are with how we live and treat each other. If we are persons, we don't live like we are a person, and we don't live like the other is a person. It is the disconnect between who we are and how we live that in Jesus, being a person, we finally see it achieved. This union brings humanity into perfect identity in every... Let me just explain it this way real quick. A duck is a duck is a duck. It never acts like an eagle. A dog does not act like a pony. Whoever, whatever a dog is, it always behaves like its nature. Its behavior is always in agreement with its ontological existence. I'm not just talking its biological DNA. Of course, biologically, it is a dog. But where does the behavior come from? There is an ontological DNA in addition to a biological DNA. There is something that makes a dog behave like a dog and not a pony. There's something that makes a duck behave like a duck and not an eagle. That's what we're talking about. The whole universe is in agreement with itself except us. Wow! Think of it. Of all living things in the universe, we're the only ones that are messed up. We're the only ones that do not live in agreement with who we are. We are the one that can't carry a tune singing in the choir. All creation is harmonizing together, and there's a sour note coming from Adam and Eve's grandkids. That's what we're talking about. The disconnect between who we are and how we are, how we behave. This union in Christ brings humanity into perfect identity in every way with divinity. Through this principle of hypostasis, becoming, joining the two together in that undergirding ontological way. And from both humanity and divinity completes the single composite person without creating any diminishment of the essential difference of the two natures, divinity and humanity. This mystery is obviously ineffable. Can't describe it, can't put it in words, not going to explain it, and incomprehensible. How divinity and humanity can exist in union as a single person is beyond my ability to explain. It is enough to know that the union of the two is one person, and their natural differences remain inviolate. In other words, the image and the likeness always remain image and likeness. Who we are and how we behave are always two separate realities within us. There's only one person. We're not schizophrenic. It is enough to know that the two are one, and that the natural difference between the two always remains that difference, and the fullness of both sides united together is also preserved undiminished. We don't lose part of our humanity to become like God. Christ was fully God and fully man. Fully, both. This is incredibly important. Whenever things united suffer no change or alteration, the essential principle of each of them remains pure and unmixed. And insofar as the essential principle of each, who each is, remains inviolate even after their union, the separate natures retained their integrity in every way, with neither side disowning anything properly in its own because of the union. If you want to try to understand that in human terms, a marriage is an excellent example of where the two people remain two and yet become one. And neither one is supposed to lose their identity in the relationship, but keep who they are and become who they are in their fullness out of now being personalized in the relationship. We've all seen the movie The Runaway Bride with Julia Roberts, who didn't know how she liked her own eggs, because every time she dated somebody, she ended up eating eggs the way they did. Lost her identity rather than keeping an identity mutually shared with the other. That's a cheap example of how somehow we're able to maintain who we are without losing who we are in becoming like God by treating you as a person. The two have become one in such a way that the one that now exists as a one nonetheless maintains the full integrity and principles of each other without any violation or diminishing of the fullness of each other. Therefore, when we speak of the person of Christ, this is what is meant. He is a new kind of entity like no one in the world has ever seen before. He is the person that Adam and Eve and all humanity were to become. Christ is not just another individual, even a good individual. In fact, he is not an individual at all. He is a person. He is, as it were, an unheard of and unknown kind of species, fully God and fully man. He is the person, the kind of person that Adam and Eve and all humanity were to become. The species, the chosen generation, the genus it says there in Greek, God created mankind to become. Christ is the first of a new species, a royal priesthood, a holy ethnicity, God's own special people. This is the great and hidden mystery. This is the blessed end for which all things were brought into existence. This is mind-boggling. Who knew? This is the divine purpose conceived before the beginning of beings. And in defining it, we would say that this mystery is the preconceived goal for the sake of which everything exists, and it was with a view to this end that God created the essence of beings in the first place. This is the mystery that circumscribes, encircles, is larger than, and is all the way around all the ages, and which reveals the grand plan of God, notice, as a super infinite plan, infinitely pre-existing the ages an infinite number of times. This has always, always, always been the plan of God, regardless of how many new world orders mankind has created in the meantime. Wow. In the Incarnation, by becoming human, God displayed in Himself the very goal for which creatures manifestly received the beginning of their existence. This is why we were created in the first place. The Incarnation visibly shows us what Adam and Eve were to achieve. This is why Adam and Eve were created in the first place, to bring the Incarnation to pass in their own lives. Well, the second Adam. Adam did not fulfill his vocation. Adam and Eve did not fulfill the purpose of their own creation. They were created with the image and for the purpose of becoming like the image within them. But the plan of God was not destroyed by the sin of man. The vocation of the first Adam was fulfilled by Christ, the second Adam. What man ought to have attained by raising himself up to God, God achieved by descending to man. This is the mystery which circumscribes all the ages and which reveals the grand plan of God, a super infinite plan infinitely pre-existing the ages an infinite number of times. Note, ages translate the Greek aion, which transliterates to eon. The term derives from I, which means duration. You see, an eon, an age, is a particular duration of time, a time period, such as the Victorian age or the Gilded Age. That is, a particular duration of time characterized by dominant cultural themes. The mystery of the divine super infinite plan, infinitely pre-existing the ages of all mankind's invention, is a plan outside any changes or cultural periods within human time. The plan is absolutely not impacted by whatever society in 2020 says is right and what's wrong. Get over it. God's plan is not impacted by any rules we as human beings decide to say is right and wrong. It doesn't matter. God's plan is eternally larger than, bigger than, outside of, infinitely many times of all the ages that have been and ever will be. The super infinite plan infinitely pre-exists and remains unaltered, even by Adam and Eve's refusal to participate. It doesn't matter if everybody in the United States today decides to say no. It doesn't mean God's going to say yes to them. You got it? Is that okay? In becoming man, By joining the divine and the human within himself, the second person of the Trinity showed us that this was why we were created, and that this was God's good purpose concerning us before the ages, a purpose which underwent no innovation in its essential principle. It's not been changed, but was realized through the introduction of another, newer mode. The original plan remained the same and did not change, but the mode, that is, the manner by which it was implemented, was realized through the introduction of another, newer mode or method. That is, instead of Adam and Eve using their free will to implement the super infinite plan, God became the second Adam and used his free will to implement the plan. The plan was for Adam to do it. Adam and Eve said no, so God decided to do it. For God created us in such a way that we are similar to him, and before the ages of mankind, he determined that we should exist in him. In order for us to achieve this blessed end, he gave us a mode using our free will by which we could make proper use of these natural powers. However, man voluntarily chose to reject this mode by misusing his natural powers, that is, by using his free will to reject rather than embrace becoming like God. In order to prevent mankind from becoming completely estranged from God, he introduced another mode method in its place, more marvelous and befitting God than the first, the mystery of the supremely mystical sojourn of God among human beings. Therefore, it is perfectly clear to all that the mystery accomplished in Christ at the end of the age is nothing other than the proof and fulfillment of the mystery which our forefather failed to attain at the beginning of the age. Adam didn't, second Adam did. Same fulfillment. The Word of God became, as it were, a messenger of this plan when he became man, displaying in himself the very goal for which creatures manifestly received the beginning of their existence. We're almost at a halfway point. Can we go just a few more pages? It is not a change of the plan, it is a change of the tree. Adam and Eve did not change the super infinite plan, the goal or purpose of creation. They refused to be part of the plan. Their refusal did not alter the plan, it altered them. They chose knowledge over life. They chose information over relationship. They chose right and wrong, good and evil, rules and regulations over living personally. They chose death over life. The super infinite plan never changed, but Adam and Eve certainly did. The plan of God was not destroyed by the failure of man. The vocation of the first Adam was fulfilled by Christ, the second Adam. God became man in order that man might become God, to become like God. For it was for this end that the Word of God was made man, and he who was the Son of God became the Son of Man, that man, having been taken into the Word and receiving the adoption, might become the Son of God. He indeed assumed humanity, that we might become God. For if man who had been created by God that he might live should not any more return to life, but should be utterly and forever abandoned to death, God would have been conquered, and the wickedness of the serpent would have prevailed over the will of God. But God, who is invincible, by means of the second man did he bind the strong man, the serpent, and spoiled his goods, and abolished death, vivifying, giving to life that man who had been in a state of death. God became man in order for man to become God. By becoming man as a man, God achieved the goal of creation that Adam failed to achieve. But by so doing, God restored the original purpose of the creation of Adam once again to mankind by restoring the original choice to mankind. Mankind once more has the choice of becoming like the image of God. Mankind once more has the choice of which tree will nourish and sustain them. The living, visible image. What then was God to do? What else could he possibly do? Being God, but renew his image in mankind, so that through it men might once more come to know him. And how could this be done save by the coming of the very image himself, our Savior Jesus Christ? Man could not have done it, for they are only made after the image, nor could angels have done it, for they are not the images of God. The Word of God came in his person, because it was he alone, the image of the Father, who could recreate man after the image. Therefore he assumed a human body, that men might be renewed according to the image. Wow. We should have stopped an hour ago, right?
No. Okay.
We're going to take our break. We'll come back in a few minutes and tackle an excursus, a little side trip, if you will. God bless you. Let's take a break. An excursus. What is an image? Excursus is an excursion, a side trip. We're not going to complete this evening. But we will start it, maybe go about halfway, and then next week we'll pick up where we left off, and then we'll see when we finish that. God willing, we'll have the next pages ready to go from there. We have used the term image over 100 times already in Paradise Has Two Trees. Before going any further, it is necessary for us to take a side trip, an excursion, to explore the term image. What is it we see? This is a question. What is it we see? We are trapped in a world of our five senses. We believe what our senses tell us because we believe our senses are telling the truth. Our senses deceive us. The deception of the senses acts like a veil that confines our soul to the surface appearances and therefore impedes our entering into the full reality of what is present behind the veil. Surrounded by veiled reality, we have become oblivious to the realities that are present behind the veil. Instead of looking further, we invest all of our energy solely into what can be perceived by the senses. Reality is a window that is draped with heavy curtains. What we see is what we get. If we see a wall covered with a tapestry, pretend this is a curtain or a tapestry here on the wall, then we look no further than the tapestry. We investigate, we use our energy investigating the tapestry, learning its facts, disclosing its design, its color, all of the intricate details that we get involved with, the secrets in its composition. We're talking, you see, about the visible surface of reality. We're using the metaphor of a wall and a tapestry or a curtain. But if this tapestry had a cord, like a curtain does, and unknown to us, if we pulled the cord and it opened, it would reveal and we would know there's a window behind this. Wow! We never know it till we get behind it. If we stop with the surface, the curtain. If we see a wall covered with a tapestry, we look no further than it. You would know there's a whole world on the other side of this tapestry that you never knew was there if we saw it was a window. But if we see only a wall, we only get a wall. If we see a window, we get so much more than just a wall. If we see a glass wall covered by a tapestry, we can peek behind the tapestry and discover that which is hidden. We will discover that the tapestry of life is not an end in itself. The tapestry of life is but a curtain covering the window that lets us enter that which is present and hidden by the curtain that hides it. If we're willing to look beyond the curtain. The glass wall is still a wall. It still functions as a wall. But everything we think we know about the wall is transformed once we know the wall is not an end in itself. If there's something I can see through the wall on the other side of the wall, I don't have to beat my head up against the wall. If it is a window, consider it. If all we have is a wall, it's a wall. But if suddenly it turns into a window, it changes our whole way of looking at things. Instead of thinking about a wall, we now think and see by means of a window. I don't know how else to describe the reality except a wall and a window. Our knowledge is transfigured when we can see through the wall. That's what a window does. Once we see a window where once we thought there was only a wall. Once we see the window, we can never go back to acting as if there's nothing on the other side of the curtain. We know what we know without knowing how we know. And we know that we know it. You've heard me say it before. A person with an experience is never at the mercy of a man with an argument. You can tell me that's a wall all day long, but I know better. I've seen through the window. That brings us then to icons and idols. The Greek terms icon and eidolon share a very similar meaning. An image, a likeness, such as a cat or a dog or a person, an individual, I should say. The term icon also carries the additional meaning of a portrait. Now, in practice, the two terms have a radical different meaning. An eidolon was associated with an object of worship. In Greek, the word for worship is latria. And if you joined the two together, if you joined eidolon and latria together, you got idolatria, idolatry, the worship of the object itself. On the other hand, icon was a visible portrait that represented a person when they were absent. An icon was a visible portrait of an absent, therefore invisible person. We have pictures of loved ones in our homes, perhaps in your purse or wallet. I need to update my thinking and say, or our cell phone. The person is not in your wallet or in your phone, but you have a portrait of them that represents them and brings them to mind. An icon is a visible portrait of an absent and therefore invisible person. The difference between icon and idol is simple. An icon includes both the visible picture and its invisible subject. A portrait is about the person in the portrait and not about the portrait itself. Make sense to you? You never mistake a picture for a person. If you have a choice of kissing the picture or the person, you kiss the person. On the other hand, an idol breaks any connection between the visible object and an invisible subject and focuses solely on the visible object itself. The idol is a self-contained object or entity. It's self-contained. It doesn't take you anywhere else. An icon is both the visible object and the invisible subject. It is both. An idol is only a visible object. An idol is merely a wall, a curtain or tapestry on a wall, something visible. An icon is a window. It points to its invisible subject. Simply stated, an icon is a portrait of a person who is absent. We don't have the portrait without the person, but an idol is the thing itself. If it's a sculpture of a cat, it's not the cat itself, but once I worship it, it becomes the focus of my attention. I no longer think about the cat, This physical object, the idol itself, is now what I worship. The physical becomes a substitute, in other words. The physical becomes real, and that which is invisible is forgotten. We have here an understanding of life. Life is either iconic. I'm using that in our technical sense, not the way we throw it around in everyday language. Life is either iconic, it's either an icon, a visible portrait or window telling us about the invisible that is present without us knowing it. Our reality, if it's not iconic, reality is simply a physical object like an idol. We either have an iconic understanding of the universe, of reality, or we have and make an idol out of the physical world that we live in. Reality is iconic. Reality is an icon. Reality includes the visible manifestation that points to and reveals its invisible source or prototype. Are we getting the distinction of what an icon is? And we're now suggesting this is what reality is itself. Not just an icon that we're used to, but reality itself is iconic. The function of reality is to reveal within itself the truth, which till then has been concealed, the window. If you have a portrait, a photograph, and you know the person, then you know who's revealed in the picture. However, if you've ever looked through a box of pictures from a great-grandparent that passed away, if there's no name on the back side identifying whose picture it is, you will say, well, I wonder who this is. The picture reveals the presence of an absent person. We may know the person and therefore the picture. If we do not know the person, the picture reveals an unknown, but it still reveals. I wonder who this is. The visible reveals the presence of the invisible, which is incomparably beyond all visible things. Reality itself is iconic. Everyone uses the word iconic. However, we are not talking about some sports person or actor. We are using the original use of the word icon to be a portrait of that which is visibly a portrait that points of that which it visibly represents. An icon visibly represents something. To be iconic is to be that in which the visible and invisible are always linked together. You can't sever the relationship if it's iconic. It's visible and invisible simultaneously. Iconic reality has the power, the force of a transcendent negation. What? The invisible does not negate the existence of the visible, as Eastern Oriental religions do. Only the invisible counts in an Eastern Oriental religion. The presence of the invisible also negates the claim of the visible to be self-contained and self-sufficient. In other words, when it's iconic, it negates the either side claiming to be absolute. The visible cannot claim to be absolute over the invisible, nor can the invisible claim to be absolute over the visible. You don't have a chance to have Oriental religions, nor do you have a chance to have Western rationalism that negates the invisible. An iconic reality is both the visible and the invisible. The invisible negates making the world an idol, the world itself, whether we're worshiping the world religiously or where we study it religiously scientifically, as if it's all there is. If you are on the mountain and you see the transfiguration of Christ, you are seeing this visible human being suddenly revealing the invisible presence of divinity that has been there all along. You have just realized the wall wasn't a wall. It is a window. In other words, if you had been Peter, James, and John and had gone up that mountain, you have been with this visible human being for weeks, months, and now years. And suddenly you realize he's not a solid wall of human flesh. He is a window. And his human flesh becomes transparent like glass, and the divinity that has been resident inside Jesus Christ shines through the window. It doesn't add something that wasn't there. It reveals what has been present all along. That is iconic then. The iconic reality being revealed in the Incarnation says there is both. There is both the visible and the invisible. What I'm saying to you, and I want you to, I don't know how to do it. We have been saying that reality is iconic, that it reveals the invisible with it. And when we look at Jesus Christ, we have the invisible, the one who has taken on human flesh. And we then localize that inside of just, okay, he's the God-man. We make that into something we think we can contain in our thinking. And we've never stopped to realize what is being revealed in that very moment. Being revealed that the invisible has always been present in him, and that reveals to us the nature of reality itself, that inside all physical, visible reality, the invisible is also present. That is what we are beginning to sense and realize with the Incarnation. This is what the Incarnation as Incarnation reveals. This is what we are beginning to see and beginning to know. This is much bigger than just saying one man was incarnate. Stated plainly, the existence of creation is itself iconic. At the very least, it reveals there is an unknown creator. Adam and Eve living in the midst of an iconic reality, living in the midst of the visible and the invisible. I don't know what page I'm on. Sorry. What page? 257? 37? 237. All right. Stated plainly, the existence of creation is itself iconic. It reveals an unknown creator. Adam and Eve living in the midst of iconic reality, living in the midst of the visible and the invisible, seeing that the visible fruit of the tree was pleasant to the eyes and a tree beautiful to contemplate, they became infatuated with matter, with visible stuff. They took its fruit and ate. They loved the visible, devoured the visible. They consumed the visible and in turn were consumed by the visible. Mankind became frenzied in their abuse of material things and their irrational lust for the things of this life. Infatuated with the visible, mankind became blind and oblivious to the presence of the invisible. In their blindness, iconic reality became idolic reality, became an idol, became a thing in itself. Only the visible was real to them. Professing to be wise, they became fools and changed the glory of the incorruptible God into an image made like corruptible man and birds and four-footed animals and creeping things. What could be known of God by our own rational capabilities, God showed us and revealed to us in the iconic world He created. There was something that could be known of the Creator in the world He created. God gave us a brain, a rational mind, and the ability with our senses to sense the things of the world so that we saw the world correctly, that if we saw it correctly, it would reveal there was a creator, if you like, intelligent design. For since the creation of the world, His invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even His eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse, who exchanged the truth of God for the lie, and worshiped and served the creature rather than the Creator. In the Transfiguration on Mount Tabor, the truth of God that could not be known by our rational capabilities, that is, the truth of reality, was revealed when the eyes of the apostles were transfigured and the visible human flesh of Jesus became transparent as glass, and they saw the invisible divinity present and resident all along in Jesus. The Transfiguration did not add something to Jesus, it revealed what had been present all along. The Transfiguration revealed the truth of Incarnation. The light that shone forth on Mount Tabor was the light of divinity resident within Jesus. Jesus did not manifest a radiance other than that which He already had invisibly. He possessed the splendor of the divine nature hidden under His flesh. According to the theologians, when Christ was transfigured, He neither received anything different nor was changed into anything different, but was revealed to the disciples as He was, opening their eyes and giving sight to the blind. The Incarnation, Transfiguration revealed the iconic nature of Jesus as well as the iconic nature of reality. The world is not a solid wall covered with tapestries to be worshiped as ends in themselves. The world is iconic. It is a glass window that reveals the invisible presence among us and the iconic Christ. It is no mistake that the Incarnation reveals the iconic nature of reality, reveals that nature functions as an icon. The Incarnation reveals Jesus to be the Word, the Logos, the author of creation itself. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through Him, and without Him nothing was made that was made. By faith we understand that the worlds were framed by the Word of God, so that the things which are seen were not made of things which are visible. The visible did not create the visible. It is the invisible spoken word of the Word that created what is visible. God has in these last days spoken to us by His Son, through whom also He made the worlds, who is the brightness of His glory and the express image of His person. The Son is the icon of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For by Him all things were created that are in heaven and that are on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or principalities or powers. All things were created through Him and for Him, and He is before all things, and in Him all things consist. You are worthy, O Lord, to receive glory and honor and power, for You created all things, and by Your will they exist and were created. Thou art worthy. Thou art worthy, O Lord, for Thou hast all things created, for Thou hast created all things, and for Thy glory they are created. Thou art worthy, O Lord. Amen. That's as far as we'll go in our excursus tonight. God bless you, and we'll do the rest of this next week. Thanks.